Emma Thompson wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked out of Manchester Children's Hospital. It had been another long day of caring for sick children. Her white nurse uniform was wrinkled and tired, just like she felt after working for 14 straight hours. But Emma was not complaining. She loved her job. Every day, she saw the worried faces of parents sitting by their children's hospital beds. She held their hands when they cried. She sang soft songs to help the little ones fall asleep. Her gentle voice and warm smile had comforted hundreds of families over the years. As Emma got into a small blue car, she smiled thinking about tomorrow. Her 8-year-old daughter Lucy was singing in the school concert. Lucy had been practicing her song for weeks, and Emma could not wait to hear her sweet voice fill the school hall. The drive home was peaceful, the streets were quiet, and most people were already inside their homes having dinner with their families. Emma hummed the same song that Lucy had been practicing. She was tired, but her heart felt full of love for her daughter and all the children she helped every day. The radio played soft music as Emma drove through the familiar neighborhoods. She had lived in this area for 10 years. She knew every street corner and every shop. The local people knew her too. They would wave when they saw her walking to work in her nurse uniform. Children would run up to hug her when they saw her at the grocery store. Suddenly, bright blue lights flashed in her car mirror. Emma's heart jumped a little, but she stayed calm. She had never been in trouble with the police before. Maybe one of her car lights was broken, or perhaps she had been driving a little too fast without noticing. Emma pulled her car to the side of the road and turned off the engine. She put her hands on the steering wheel where the officer could see them, just like her husband James had taught her. James worked for the government and had always told her to be polite and careful during police stops. A tall policeman walked up to her window. His face looked angry and unfriendly, Emma noticed. His name badge said Officer Davies. She tried to give him her usual warm smile, but he did not smile back. "License and registration," Officer Davies said in a harsh voice. He did not say hello or explain why he had stopped her. Emma nodded politely. "Good evening, officer. Of course. May I please ask what this is about?" She spoke in her gentle nurse voice, the same voice she used to calm frightened children. Emma slowly reached toward her glove compartment to get her registration papers. She moved carefully and kept her other hand visible, just as James had taught her. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Officer Davies suddenly shouted very loudly. His hand moved quickly toward his belt. "Get out of the car right now." Emma felt confused and scared. Her voice started to shake. "I am sorry, officer. I do not understand. You asked for my registration, so I was reaching for it in my glove compartment." But Officer Davies was not listening to her explanation. His mind was already made up about what kind of person Emma was. He did not see a tired nurse who had spent all day caring for sick children. He did not see a loving mother who was thinking about her daughter's school concert. He only saw what he wanted to see. "Get out now," Davies shouted again, even louder this time. Emma's hands were shaking as she opened her car door. She had never been treated like this before. She tried to stay calm and do exactly what the officer told her to do, but nothing she did seemed to be right. Within just a few minutes, Emma found herself lying face down on the cold, hard pavement. The metal handcuffs felt tight and painful round her wrists. Her clean nurse uniform was now dirty and torn from the rough treatment. People from the neighborhood began to come out of their houses. They stood on their porches and looked at the scene with curious eyes. Emma felt embarrassed and confused. These were people who knew her. They had seen her walking to work every morning for years. "Please, there has been a mistake," Emma said through her tears. "My husband is James Thompson. He works for the government. You can call him and ask." Officer Davies laughed in a mean way. "Sure he does, lady. Everyone says their husband is important when they get arrested. They all have the same story." Emma felt her heart breaking. She thought about Lucy sitting at home, probably wondering where her mother was. Lucy would be practicing her song one more time before going to bed. She would be excited about tomorrow's concert. Not knowing that her mother might not be there to watch her sing. Emma also thought about all the children at the hospital who would need her care tomorrow morning. Who would comfort them if she was not there? Who would sing them to sleep when they were scared, as the police car drove Emma away from her neighborhood? She watched her own car getting smaller and smaller through the back window. Everything in her life had changed in just a few minutes, and she did not understand why. That night, Emma lay on the hard bed in her jail cell. The ceiling was grey and cold. She tried to remember Lucy's song and the faces of all the children she had helped that day. She told herself that the truth would come out soon. Good people would help her. Justice would win in the end. She had to believe this, because hope was all she had left. James Thompson reached across the bed at 6 in the morning, expecting to feel his wife's warm body next to him. Instead, his hand touched cold, empty sheets. He opened his eyes and sat up quickly. Looking round their quiet bedroom, Emma sighed. The bed was perfectly made, which meant she had never come home last night. James felt a small worry start to grow in his chest. Emma always left a note on the kitchen table when she had to work late at the hospital. She never forgot to tell him where she was. James got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, hoping to find one of Emma's usual notes. The kitchen table was empty except for Lucy's school books and a drawing she had made of their family. There was no note from Emma anywhere. As the newly appointed National Security Advisor, James was used to getting important phone calls at strange hours. His job meant dealing with emergencies and unexpected problems every day. But Emma was never part of those problems. She was the calm, steady part of his life that never worried him. James made coffee with shaking hands and tried to think of reasonable explanations. Maybe Emma had fallen asleep in the break room at the hospital after her long shift. Maybe her phone battery had died. Maybe she was helping with an emergency and could not call home. At 8 o'clock, James's phone rang. He grabbed it quickly, hoping to hear Emma's voice apologizing for not calling. Instead, it was someone from Manchester Children's Hospital. "Mr. Thompson, this is Linda from the hospital. We are wondering why Emma did not come in for her morning shift. She was supposed to be here an hour ago, and this is very unusual for her." James felt his worry turn into real fear. Emma had never missed work without calling. She was the most responsible person he knew. Other nurses sometimes called in sick or arrived late. But never Emma. She cared too much about her patients to let them down. She never came home last night. James told Linda, his voice tight with concern. "I thought she was working late at the hospital." "No. She left here around 7 yesterday evening after her shift ended. She seemed tired but happy. She was talking about Lucy's school concert today." James spent the next 4 hours making phone calls. He called every hospital in the city, thinking maybe Emma had been in an accident. He called their friends and family members. He called the police to report Emma missing. Each phone call made him more frightened. James sat in his important government office, surrounded by papers about national security and defense matters. These were the kinds of problems that affected millions of people. But all he could think about was his wife. Where was she? Was she hurt? Was she scared? At exactly 12 o'clock, James's phone rang again. This time it was Mary, one of Emma's closest friends from the hospital. "James, I just heard something terrible. Emma was arrested last night. She is at the Central Police Station downtown." The words hit James like someone had punched him in the stomach. He could not breathe for a moment. Emma rested. His gentle, kind wife who spent her life helping sick children. It made no sense at all. "That is impossible," James said. "Emma would never do anything wrong. There must be some mistake." "I know, James, we all know. But that is what I heard from someone who saw it happen. You need to go there right now." James grabbed his coat and called the family lawyer, Michael Wilson. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial the phone number. As they drove to the police station together, James tried to imagine what could have happened. Emma was the most law-abiding person in the world. She had never even gotten a parking ticket. The Central Police Station was a big, grey building that looked cold and unfriendly. James had never been inside a police station before, except for official government meetings. Now, he was here as a worried husband, not as a government official. At the front desk, a young police officer named Roberts was reading a newspaper and eating a sandwich. He looked up at James with a bored expression, like James was just another person with a problem. "Can I help you?" Roberts asked without much interest. James tried to keep his voice calm and professional. "I am James Thompson, National Security Advisor. I believe you have my wife, Emma Thompson, in custody. I would like to see her immediately." The change in Roberts's face was immediate and dramatic. The color disappeared from his cheeks, and his mouth fell open. The sandwich dropped from his hand onto the desk. He started to stammer and make excuses, speaking so fast that his words ran together. "Sir, I am so sorry. We had no idea. If we had known who she was, this never would have happened. It was all a misunderstanding." James held up his hand to stop the flood of nervous words. His voice was quiet but firm. "I do not want to hear excuses right now. I want to see my wife, and I want to know exactly what happened to her." 20 minutes later, a door opened and Emma walked out. She was still wearing her wrinkled nurse uniform from yesterday. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were red from crying. But when she saw James, she tried to smile for him. James felt his heart break into pieces when he saw her. This was his Emma, who sang lullabies to sick children and brought flowers home from the hospital garden. She looked small and tired and hurt. "I am sorry I missed Lucy's concert," Emma whispered as James wrapped his arms round her and held her tight. James closed his eyes and tried not to cry. "This is not your fault, my love. None of this is your fault." As they walked out of the police station together, James knew that their lives had changed forever. This was not just about one terrible night. This was about something much bigger that was wrong with the world, and somehow they were going to help fix it. Chief Inspector Margaret Collins had worked as a police officer for 25 years. She had always believed that being a police officer meant protecting people and doing what was right. When she heard about Emma Thompson's arrest, she knew she had to find out exactly what had happened. Margaret sat in her office early Monday morning with a cup of coffee and opened the police report from Officer Davies. As she read his version of events, she felt something was not right. The report said that Emma had been acting suspicious and aggressive during the traffic stop. It said she had refused to cooperate and had tried to resist arrest. But Margaret knew Emma Thompson by reputation. Everyone in the community knew about the kind nurse who worked at the children's hospital. Margaret's own neighbor had told her stories about how Emma had helped her sick grandson feel better during his stay at the hospital. Margaret picked up her phone and called the technical department. "I need to see the body camera footage from Officer Davies from last Tuesday night," she said. "Send it to my computer right away." 30 minutes later, Margaret was watching the video footage on her computer screen. What she saw made her feel sick to her stomach. The video showed Emma being polite and calm. Emma had done exactly what Officer Davies had asked her to do. She had reached for her registration papers slowly and carefully, keeping one hand visible at all times. But Officer Davies had shouted at Emma for no reason. He had treated her like a dangerous criminal when she was clearly just a tired nurse trying to get home from work. The video showed Emma's confusion and fear as the situation got worse and worse for no good reason. Margaret watched the footage 3 times to make sure she was seeing it correctly each time. She became more angry at what Officer Davies had done. Emma Thompson had been completely innocent. She had done nothing wrong at all. Meanwhile, news about Emma's arrest was spreading through the community like wildfire. At Manchester Children's Hospital, all the nurses and doctors were talking about what had happened to their colleague. They could not believe that someone as gentle and caring as Emma had been treated so badly by the POLIC. Dr. Patricia Williams, who had worked with Emma for 8 years, called a meeting of all the hospital staff. Emma Thompson is one of the best nurses I have ever worked with, she told the crowd of worried employees. She has dedicated her life to helping sick children and their families. What happened to her is completely wrong. The hospital staff decided to do something to show their support for Emma. They made a large banner that said, "We stand with Emma Thompson," and hung it outside the hospital entrance. They also started collecting signatures for a letter that would be sent to the police department and the mayor at the same time. Parents whose children had been patients of Emma's began calling the hospital and the local newspaper. They wanted everyone to know what kind of person Emma really was. Robert Wilson was one of those parents. His 4-year-old son Tommy had been very sick with pneumonia 6 months earlier. Tommy had been scared and crying every night at the hospital until Emma started taking care of him. Double quotes, "Mrs. Thompson saved my son's life," Robert told the newspaper reporter. She stayed with Tommy all night when he was scared and could not sleep. She sang him songs and read him stories. She held his hand when he had to get painful treatments. She is an angel, not a criminal. Similar stories came from other parents all over the city. There was the mother of a baby girl who had been born too early. Emma had spent extra hours with the tiny baby, making sure she was comfortable and helping the worried parents understand what was happening. There was the grandfather, whose grandson had broken his leg in a bicycle accident. Emma had distracted the scared boy with funny jokes while the doctors put a cast on his leg. She had even drawn pictures on the cast to make the boy feel better. Old Mrs. Henderson, who lived next door to Emma and James, told everyone who would listen about how Emma helped her carry groceries up the stairs to her apartment every week. "Emma never asks for anything in return," Mrs. Henderson said. "She just does it because she has a good heart." Back at the Thompson house, Emma and James sat at their kitchen table surrounded by piles of letters and cards. People from all over the city were sending messages of support. Many of the letters were from parents thanking Emma for the care she had given their children. Emma read each letter carefully, with tears in her eyes. She had not realized how many people she had helped over the years. Each letter reminded her of a different child she had cared for or a family she had comforted during a difficult time. Lucy Thompson had been embarrassed when she first heard about her mother's arrest. Some of the kids at school had asked her questions she did not know how to answer, but as more and more people began speaking up for her mother, Lucy started to understand something important. One evening, Lucy was watching the local news with her parents when a story came on about Emma's case. The reporter was interviewing people who knew Emma, and they were all saying wonderful things about her. "Mommy," Lucy said, looking up at Emma with wide eyes, "why are all these people saying such nice things about you on television?" Emma pulled her daughter close and hugged her tight. Sometimes, sweetheart, bad things happen to good people. But when they do, other good people stand up to help make things right. All these people are standing up for me because they know the truth about who I really am. James watched his wife and daughter together and felt his heart fill with both pride and determination. His political advisers had been calling him all week, telling him to keep quiet about the situation. They said he should just accept an apology from the police department and try to move on with his life. But as James looked at all the letters of support and saw how the community was rallying round Emma, he knew that keeping quiet was not the right thing to do. Emma deserved better than a quiet apology. All the people who were supporting her deserved better. The whole community deserved better. The phone call came early on Thursday morning while James was getting dressed for work. It was their lawyer, Michael Wilson, calling with news about the case. "James, I have an offer from the city," Michael said in his professional voice. "They want to settle this matter quietly and quickly." James sat down on the edge of his bed and listened carefully as Michael explained the details. The city was offering Emma and James a large amount of money to make the whole problem go away. They would not have to go to court or deal with reporters asking questions. Officer Davies would get some extra training, but he would keep his job. "How much money are they offering?" James asked. When Michael told him the amount, James was surprised. It was enough money to pay for Lucy's college education and maybe even buy a bigger house. The city clearly wanted this problem to disappear as soon as possible. "There is one condition," Michael continued, "Emma, and you cannot talk about what happened to anyone. No interviews with newspapers, no speeches, no public discussions about the case. You have to promise to stay completely quiet." After the phone call ended, James sat in his government office looking at the legal papers that Michael had sent over. The settlement offer was written in fancy legal language, but the meaning was simple. "Take the money and keep your mouth shut." James thought about how easy it would be to just sign the papers. His career as national security advisor would be safe. Nobody in the government would be angry at him for causing trouble. Lucy would not have to deal with reporters following her to school or asking her friends questions about her family. But when James got home that evening, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table with a sad look on her face. She had been quiet and thoughtful all week, and James could tell something was bothering her. "What are you thinking about?" James asked gently, sitting down next to his wife. Emma looked at him with tears starting to form in her eyes. "I keep thinking about the woman I met in that jail cell. Her name was Patricia Miller, and she was about my age. She had 2 young children at home. Just like us." Emma wiped her eyes with a tissue and continued talking. "Patricia told me that this was not the first time the police had treated her badly. She said it happened to her twice before, but she could never afford to hire a lawyer, so she just said she was guilty of whatever they accused her of, just to get out of jail and go home to her children." James reached over and took Emma's hand. He could see how much this was bothering her. "Patricia asked me if I was going to fight back," Emma said. "She said that people like her never win because they do not have money or important friends. But maybe someone like me could make a difference." Emma's voice got stronger as she talked. "How many Patricia Millers are out there, James? How many people get treated badly by the police but cannot do anything about it? How many people just suffer quietly because they're afraid or poor or do not know how to get help?" James squeezed Emma's hand. He was starting to understand why she looked so troubled. On Saturday morning, their mailbox was full of letters from people all over the city. Most of them were messages of support from parents whose children Emma had cared for at the hospital. But one letter was different from all the others. The letter was written on simple white paper in neat handwriting. Emma opened it and began to read out loud to James and Lucy. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, my name is Catherine Brown, and I am a teacher at Lincoln Elementary School. I read about what happened to you in the newspaper, and I had to write to tell you my story." Emma continued reading. "Last year, I was stopped by the police while driving home from work. Just like you were. The officer was rude and aggressive, and he arrested me even though I had done nothing wrong. I spent a night in jail, and it was the most frightening experience of my life." Emma's voice began to shake as she read the next part. "I wanted to complain about how I was treated, but I was too scared. I thought nobody would believe a young teacher over a police officer. I thought people would say it was my fault somehow. So I stayed quiet and tried to forget about it." The letter continued. "But when I read about what happened to you, I realized something important. You are educated and respected. You are married to an important man in the government. If this can happen to someone like you, then maybe people will finally believe that it happens to regular people like me too." Emma looked up at James with tears in her eyes. "She ends the letter by asking me not to let them silence me. She says that I have a chance to speak up for all the people who cannot speak up for themselves." Ma folded the letter carefully and put it back in its envelope. "James, we have to make a decision. Do we take the money and stay quiet, or do we fight back?" James looked at his wife and daughter sitting at their kitchen table. He thought about Patricia Miller in her jail cell and Catherine Brown staying quiet about her bad experience. He thought about all the other people who might be treated badly by police officers who thought they could get away with anything. "It will not be easy if we decide to fight," James told Emma honestly. "There will be reporters asking us questions all the time. People might criticize us on television and in newspapers. Some of my colleagues in the government might not like the attention." Emma nodded. "I know it will be difficult, but we have something that most people do not have. We have a platform. We have people who will listen to us. If we do not use that platform to help others, then what is the point of having it?" James smiled at his wife. This was why he had fallen in love with her 15 years ago. Emma always thought about other people before she thought about herself. They called Michael Wilson and told him to reject the settlement offer, instead of taking the money and staying quiet. They would take the case to court. They would demand real changes, to make sure that what happened to Emma would not happen to other innocent people. 6 months had passed since the terrible night when Emma Thompson was arrested. Now she stood on the stage of the town hall, wearing her best blue dress, looking out at hundreds of people who had come to see her receive the community service. Award Mayor William Harrison held the beautiful Crystal Award in his hands as he spoke into the microphone. "Emma Thompson has shown us what it means to turn pain into purpose," he said. "She could have stayed quiet after what happened to her. Instead, she chose to fight for justice, not just for herself, but for everyone in our community." Emma felt nervous as she walked up to accept the award. 6 months ago, she had been a quiet nurse who just wanted to do her job and take care of her family. Now she was standing in front of all these people, being called a hero. It still felt strange to her, but this awards ceremony was not really the end of Emma's story. It was actually the beginning of something much bigger and more important. The court case had brought many changes to the police department. Officer Davies, the man who had arrested Emma for no good reason, had been fired from his job. He also had to go to court and face legal punishment for what he had done. He would never be allowed to work as a police officer again. Officer Richards, who had been Davies's partner that night, had felt terrible about what happened. At first, he had been too scared to speak up against his partner. But after the truth came out, Richards realized he had made a big mistake by staying quiet. Now, he was working with community groups to help police officers and citizens understand each other better. Chief Inspector Margaret Collins had used Emma's case to make important changes in our police. Officers were trained. All officers now had to take special classes about treating people fairly, no matter what color their skin was or where they came from. They also learned better ways to calm down tense situations instead of making them worse. Every police officer in the city now had to wear a small camera on their uniform. These cameras recorded everything that happened during police stops. So, there would always be proof of what really occurred. A group of ordinary citizens was also created to review complaints about police officers, so the police could not just investigate themselves anymore. But the thing that made Emma most proud was the Emma Thompson Legal Aid Foundation. This was a new organization that helped people who could not afford lawyers when they had problems with the police. Patricia Miller, the woman Emma had met in jail that first night, was the foundation's very first client. Patricia's case had been looked at again, and the judges decided she had been treated unfairly too. All the charges against Patricia were dropped, and she was declared innocent. Patricia was so inspired by what Emma had done that she decided to go back to school to study law. She wanted to become a lawyer herself so she could help other people who found themselves in the same situation she had been in. James had used his important job in the government to push for changes all across the country. The new rules and training programs that had been created in their city were now being copied by police departments in other cities too. People started calling them the Thompson Protocols because they came from Emma and James's fight for Justice Stoddart. The awards ceremony. Emma looked out at all the faces in the audience. She recognized many of them. There were nurses and doctors from the children's hospital where she worked. There were parents whose children she had cared for over the years. There were community leaders and ordinary people who had found the courage to speak up about problems in their own lives because of Emma's example. When it was time for Emma to give her speech, she stepped up to the microphone and looked out at all the people who had supported her. 6 months ago, Emma said in her gentle voice, "I thought my story was about one terrible night when something bad happened to me. But I have learned that it was really about all the nights that came after, all the nights we spent working together, supporting each other, and building something better for our community." In the front row, 9-year-old Lucy Thompson sat beaming with pride at her mother. Lucy had written an essay for school called My Hero Mom that had made Emma cry happy. Tears when she read it. Lucy was no longer embarrassed about what had happened to her family. Now she understood that her parents had done something brave and important. As Emma finished her speech and started to leave the stage, a young police officer approached her. He looked nervous but determined to speak with her. "Mrs. Thompson," the young man said, "my name is Officer David Evans. I just graduated from the police academy last month." Emma smiled at him kindly. "Hello, Officer Evans. How can I help you? I wanted you to know that your story was part of our training program," he said. "We learned about what happened to you and why it was wrong. It taught me that wearing this police uniform means protecting everyone in the community, not just some people." Emma felt her heart fill with hope when she heard these words from the young officer. "Thank you for telling me that, Officer Evans. That gives me great hope for the future." Later that evening, Emma walked home with James and Lucy under the beautiful starry sky. As they walked, Emma thought about how much their lives had changed. That one terrible night had been so painful and frightening, but somehow all that pain had grown into something beautiful and meaningful. The hurt had been real, but the healing that followed had been real too. And now, because of their courage to speak up, Other people would be safer and more protected. That made all the difficulty worthwhile, the end.